just like a heartbeat. The drum beat carries on, and the drum beat carries on.
Welcome back, everyone. Glad you survived the first 2 episodes. Alright, so today I'm going to be concentrating on showing you what I've progressed onto. The hidden sidings now has the lead-in line happening around the corner here. Yeah, I was going to suspend it from the top level there, but I changed my mind. So now that will actually proceed from the hidden sidings area all the way around the corner here. It comes down to the edge and through, and then runs up the centre of this particular level here. Now that will then lead into the actual helix, but I'm taking the actual line around on the outer section here just to expose it for a little bit of difference rather than just straight into the helix itself, and then it will actually come into and start the first level. So I've already put together some of the actual boards for the helix. My previous attempt kind of proved futile. It all broke apart the way I had it put together last time, with taking it down in a rush. But now, what I'm doing is my normal boards with a 3mm cutout underneath as well. So technically I construct these little babies first off, and then construct the thinner boards to go underneath as the supporting structure. More on the actual helix construction will probably be in a different episode, but that's our progress so far. Now, coming back to this little section of this level, you notice it's actually exceeded my boards or baseboard area. I do have to somewhat keep this area indented due to the door that leads into the other room here. Now, what do I do? Well, I thought about just placing another board directly from here across to here, but come across this little scrap piece from the old one. So what I will actually then do, I can do this one-handed, is place that underneath, which will then add a little bit of variety on the scenery that potentially goes here. So I could use that as like a little rivulet or waste area coming out with a bit of hillside and so forth on there. But when I do my layouts, I actually look at my design and I kind of visualise what where structures may go, should I say, and what the scenery may look like as I'm going. So it's kind of make it up as I go in some cases, but in most I'll be following the actual set trap plan. Now you will notice the little bit of rubbish everywhere. I've still got to find room for all this, but some stuff I am still using, especially over the back there. every now and then. With the actual helix section, I do have to relocate this leg here to be more on the outer edge there, just so I can actually cover all that in with a backdrop scenery, and it then encases the actual helix itself. Now, plans for this board could potentially be a foundry area with a couple of sidings in there. I don't want to cram too many tracks around. I still want room to be able to do street scenes and city scenes, but looking at that particular area, that would look pretty good for the big foundry that I've got. Metcalf makes great kits for that, and it comes out quite big really, with loading docks and truck loading bays, so that's some nice room for that. Alrighty, some glue setting up still. Once that's dry, I might be able to actually get into laying some track, hopefully. First things first though, off to Bunnings again. Grab my free hash brown burger that they do there. Yum, especially for the tradies. And yeah, we'll actually end up getting into getting some fixture for the actual tracking. Stay tuned for more. Okay, further in detail in regards to what I'm going to be laying my track onto, I use this Woodland Scenics underlay. You can get them in rolls or a box with a roll in, but I actually get the boxes with strips in it itself. This stuff's very easy to use. It actually has a centre pre-cut section, so you cut when doing a curve, you cut that down the centre, and it actually bends and moulds in quite nicely. Now, the old argument, debate, whichever, glue or track pins. Well, when I first started out in model railroading when I was younger, I used to actually just do track straight onto the flat board, no underlay at all. And I used to actually use track pins, sorry. Haven't had enough coffee this morning. But that changes to using the Woodland Scenics underlay, and what I actually do is I go for the glue method. Now, not so much what others have used on their layouts like copy decks, etc. I actually use pretty much cheap white caulking you can use in your bathroom to line your bath areas and so forth. This stuff peels off very easy, but it actually also keeps nice and secure. I didn't really have any problems pulling the old track off this. As you can see, it just peels off and flakes off, but it still holds quite well. Doesn't peel off over the years, I've noticed either. I also then glue this using good old trusty Selly's Aquadear, which we can get in a nice 5 litre bottle, which is great. It's reasonably cheap, just water-based PVA glue. It's woodworking glue. I use that pretty much for everything. Scenery as well, mix it 50-50, brilliant stuff. Some countries may or may not have the Aquadear, but hey, look for it if you can. Otherwise, yep, that's how I do my track laying, is basically PVA glue onto the boards or the backing of this, smeared out quite smoothly. Set this up for probably about an hour or two for the Aquadear to hold and dry. Then I can come back straight away and lay the track down with a thin bead of the actual bathroom caulking. It's kind of like a silicone sealant, but doesn't set as rubbery as silicone sealant. It's more of a chalky feel to the actual substance itself. I don't know whether that'll zoom in, but yeah, it's still got the same consistency as silicone sealant, but yeah, it just seems a little bit more drier in the feel rather than oily. Alright, so that's how I'm going for laying the track. Let's proceed on. Plum Island Travel, your one-stop shop for YouTube destinations. Today's special is just a short train journey from Heathrow Airport, the Channel of Lakeside. This busy little village offers any eager traveller a shopping experience like no other. So come along and bag yourself a bargain, or even take in a movie, or join the locals at the local pub for a nice drink of whiskey or two. Minutes from the village square, your accommodation awaits, with beautifully appointed gardens and a chauffeur-driven Bentley, Lakeside Manor. You will be greeted by Lord Graham himself upon arrival. Room costs are £1,500 per night, but today's special is offering £1,000 per night. Conditions apply. Minimum stay of 7 nights. Offer ends soon, so be quick. All flights, transfers, meals are included. Package deals start from £14,000 per person, so call now 1-800-PI-TRAVEL. That's 1-800-PI-TRAVEL. Welcome back to my Mad Scientist Corner. Alright, over the years I've actually, when I was younger and into the model railroad side of things, unfortunately I've had far too long of a gap in between. I've done some research in the meantime, but all of my track used to be just laid on flat boarding. Nothing wrong with that at all, but I found doing rises or inclines and declines, that was the most difficult part for me without actually, or trying to get that smooth transition, I should say. So, I came up with this little plan. Yes, I did see some other videos of users just laying on boards big enough for the tracks, and decided to adopt that method. It does make for smoother transition, and also you get away with not using the Woodland Scenics incline and decline foam material that they produce. Nothing wrong with it, not saying don't use it, but my preference is to do it this way now. Alright, so I come up with two boards. The single track and the dual track. Basically with the actual single track, if you can see the Woodland Scenics underlay, it has a nice gap either side. The double track only just has enough to fit in, with still a little bit of a lip either side about the A, and it still then produces the actual dip down for when you're ballasting. Now, the way I actually came up about doing this, the first thought was, alright, my helix, for example, I need at least 1.6 to 1.8 metres in length. How can I keep producing these sort of curves accurately, you could say, and not using a template as such? Now, I actually try and maximise my board space when I'm doing my cutting out, so I can minimise waste, but waste, mind you, is still not thrown out. It's always kept because I do utilise it later. Could be used as supports for mountain sides and so on. So I came up with a real mathematical problem, and like the genius I am, ended up with these boards. Now, these are actually 600mm wide, and you can get them in 900, 1200, 2400 lengths. So I've opted for the 1200mm boards in lengthwise. So as you can see, they are 60 in width, and what I do is I mark the center position all the way down and pencil line it at 30 centimeters. After doing that, I thought, okay, well, how do I actually get my curves in there without having to lay several of these large boards down and trying to determine what angle to go on? So after a little bit of trial and error, well, actually not much trial and error to be honest, I came up with this little gizmo. Now, all it is just two lots of strapping that's used in, well, I'm not quite sure what it's actually used for, but I'm assuming it's used in house building or patio building. It straps the wood together, and it all comes in these little segments with holes in every single one of them. The only thing I've done is just widened a couple of the holes there and there. Now, what I did is I mark out the halfway mark and I put a pencil line there. I actually got two of these straps and strapped them together so I can actually make it variable. So if I wanted to go even wider than 1.8 meters even, I can do. But I'll have to be as lucky as an American householder and having a basement that takes up half the district. Oh, I wish I had that. So I mounted one end to an actual scrap piece of wood. I did measure in the middle and placed it in the middle. I did place it on one of the actual little grooves, and then it's just a matter of line this up level. Of course, put a straight edge on this portion to try and get that as straight as possible. Line that little marker up with the center line, and then just grab your pencil and run it side to side. Now my first mark is done by the inside marker here, and how I determined that was I placed the actual track underlay in between these 2 points and looked at it and thought, yep, that's plenty of room for a little bit of overhang of board to fit a single track in. Then I marked that one helix, but that could also be used as a the single track along the main boards itself. Then I came back out one, did a test run with this hole here, and basically found that even just moving back one was enough board space. I could technically move back two to give that extra overhang either side. Personal preference, but I decided, nah, I'll just move back one to this one to make the dual line. And that's how the thicker board comes out. So it is just a matter of line it up. The actual first hole itself, or this lower hole, I try and line up the pencil so it comes on the edge here, and same with lining up so it actually ends on the edge here, and then it's just a matter of grab hold of the pencil and trying to do this one-handed as well is fun, and then just score around, keeping the pencil to one edge like so. Now, what I also found when laying out the actual segments is that I actually kept one end, the edge, straight. But the other end, when laying them all out to try and get that diameter that I wanted and a nice smooth run, I found I had to cut off from one end a little triangular piece that came out about yay. And from this, the tip that it actually makes on after drawing, back inwards, was approximately 6.1 centimeters. And then it was just a case of draw from that pencil mark on a diagonal up to the original edge that would have been left there. So as an example, as you see, that comes flush. That edge comes flush there. So measure back, as that line would then come down to here, you measure back from that point, 6.1 to that point, draw up to there and chop that off. and hence you get the joining and the circular transition like that. That's my little hint and tip on doing this sort of structure or construction work. Up to you how you would like to do it, but it's certainly made my life nice and easy. And one of these actual boards, this one's a little bit shorter because I did use it for a straight section. There were a couple of straight sections cut off, but 600mm by this one was 1.2 meters long. That gets roughly 13 of those single boards out of it. So ample enough to do a circle. It only requires roughly about 8-ish, thereabouts, to do a full circle. But yeah, pretty much that will then assist you from there. Let's proceed on to other things. One last note before we do proceed on, and I did actually forget to mention in the previous segment, how do I determine how long that strap's going to be? Well, that's easy. All you do is you look at your, well, circular area that you want to actually do a radius around and divide it by 2. So in the instance of the actual helix itself, I had an area of 1.7 meters. If I went a little bit bigger, I wouldn't have minded 1800 or 1.8 meters in diameter, but unfortunately due to the aisle space and whoever built these walls must have been drunk. Same with the actual flooring underneath this carpet. If I'd have taken a picture of it at the time, the concrete's laid like a tsunami, but which has also made levelling up these legs very interesting. But back to the point at hand. The 1.7 meters is what I have. I've just divided that by 2, and that will give me my rough 85 centimetre distance. If my math is correct, 1.7, yeah, 85. Alright, so all I do is I actually come out and measure from roughly the centre of this screw, and then I come out and measure my furthest point, which will be halfway in between that hole, and I'll make sure it's set to the closest, being able to actually pin these in. I set it to the closest diameter that I can. Some cases it does reduce a little. The next hole pulling over would actually increase. Yeah, it's not accurate. You could widen the holes so they slide a little bit more up and down. But I tie them in there with those bolts and move it in and out, requiring the correct distance or half the diameter of your circle. And that's as easy as then drawing it out on that board. I put them back to make those. Right, so proceeding on, we've actually got the centre track glued, screwed, etc. for the hidden siding run. And now I've actually managed to get it to connect with the rest of the board, coming around the back here and then leading into the helix. Now what I do with my helix, and I'll go further in depth maybe in another episode, is I actually use threaded rod, but we'll touch on that at a later stage. So next up will be to actually get this lot fixed into place and start laying some underlay. from the hidden sidings all the way around. I need the track in and the electrics going for this next section because once I start the helix I've got to tweak the actual rise of the actual curves of the helix. Make sure none of my trains struggle to get up the gradient. If all goes well, it should actually pull up without too much ease. Now the actual back track that loops over to the back there will actually also be starting the rise to the helix. So technically before it actually comes out to the next level, which is up top here, it should hopefully only be 2 turns of the actual helix itself to exit. Alrighty, let's progress on and see how far we get after Christmas.